Welcome to Shorty Supercoach. How are we, guys? Getting stuck into a few footy tips today. Now, there are always a few upsets, I feel. Went okay last week, I think. We'll just have a little bit of a sus, but definitely didn't see the Eagles knocking off the Pies. That was a bit of a tough one. Dogs were disappointing, but probably the big one was getting St Kilda. That was probably the biggest 50-50 tip of the weekend, as they took on the Hawks. Now, I get the feeling I might have done my tips already, but before we do it, let's take a little bit of a look here. So, what did we go? I tipped 6, I think. Moved up a little bit in the ranks there. 16th out of about 115 of you lot in the Shorty Supercoach tipping. So, look at Strangers there. Not his best week with just a 4, but he's still up by 2. Ripping margin here. Number 29, or 29 margin, coming in second. Bat Rooney, nicely done. But yeah, there's Chappie, you gotta love that. But it's all pretty close. You know, there's a lot of us on 24. I'm sort of sitting there in the middle, or probably towards the lower end with the margin. So yes, but looking at last week, just before I get stuck into this week's tips. So yeah, 6 out of 9. I don't think there was too much crazy. Oh, they are this week's tips. My bad. Let's go to round 4. These did it pretty easy. Cats was actually a pretty one to get. I think a few might have gone the Lions, so that was handy. The North Melbourne Footy Club nearly upset the Swans. I feel like Freo was a handy tip. Not too many went the Giants, but yeah. And I don't think too many saw the Suns knocking over the Blues. But you already had a little sneak peek. But my tips for this week. Brisbane, really confident on the Thursday. Collingwood actually have a solid record. Not always winning, but they tend to travel up to Brizzy and put in a reasonable performance. But the Lions are flying. I know they didn't beat the Cats, but I thought they were fairly solid. It's always tough to win down at Cardinia Park. So tipping the Lions confidently. As I'm doing with the Dogs, they weren't super impressive. You know, North Melbourne would have taken away a lot more from last week than the Dogs did, but I still think there's a pretty big difference between the two sides. Same can be said for the Swans. I'm interested to see that the Eagles have 20% tipping them. Personally, I like to do my tips without looking at the percentage. I feel like it sometimes sways you subconsciously, so I just do my tips and then sometimes I'm like, oh, that's interesting, but I'm pretty confident on the Swans. I know it's over in WA, but Nick Nat is massive in amongst of all their other injury concerns. You might say Buddy's out, but I think the Swans can cover it a little bit better than the Eagles can cover their big man in the middle. Moving on to Saturday, really confident on the Saints. Gold Coast were much improved, but being in Melbourne, St Kilda are playing some really good footy, aggressive footy. So I'll be tipping the Saints and the Tigers as well. I probably thought more would tip Adelaide than West Coast, but that's not the case. The Crows have been relatively solid the last couple of weeks. Beat Port, were pretty impressive against Essendon. Pushed them all the way away from home. But people are having plenty of faith in the Tigers and what they can do. They were certainly back to some of their best the other week. And we're yet to get a tip that's going to divide us just yet, I don't think. Melbourne, very confident, as all of you are. 1% tipping the Giants. Again, Carlton, very confident on this one. Port Adelaide are struggling that much. It's crazy. At some stage, they will have a response, but I certainly won't be picking them anytime soon. If they respond, good on them, but I certainly am not going to try and predict when that could be. I feel like there was a tip that's relatively tricky at some stage. Here it is. Essendon versus Freo. This is the 50-50 game that you want to get right. And I'm going the Dockers, which, from what you guys are saying, is a slight upset. It's basically 50-50, but a few more of you guys have a bit of faith in the Bombers. That's the thing with footy tipping. You'll basically get 6-7 tips the same most weeks. It's these little 50-50 ones, unless you go for a real outside roughie. It's these 50-50 ones that you want to nail. So I've gone the Dockers. I just have a bit more faith in their scope as an overall side. I think the Bombers, look, they won on the weekend, but they weren't anything too impressive, I didn't think. I feel as if they're really struggling up forward if Wright isn't sort of doing his thing, and they miss Tipper and that type of thing. So I think obviously the Dockers are a developing team and have some inconsistencies, but I think they should get Sarong back, and I think Darcy's just getting better with every single week that goes by. I just think they are the sort of team that, I think they're 3-1 at the moment, but I feel like they haven't really played 4 quarters of great footy, and I sort of had them knocking on the door of the 8, and I think they're just very even teams, but I just lean towards the Dockers with a bit more scope for improvement, and it'd be a really big win for them away from WA. And just to finish off the round, really confident on the Cats. These games are traditionally pretty close, so I'll be heading along to this game, looking forward to that. But yeah, hopefully the Cats do it comfortably and keep my heart rate in check. So yeah, that should be good. But yeah, feel free to comment your tips below. I've been enjoying doing these footy tips, so hopefully you guys are getting around it. And if you're new to the channel, if you're not Supercoach related, let me know. If you've found your way to the channel via the footy tips, feel free to let me know. But yeah, I'm going to wrap it up there. I'll be back with plenty of Supercoach content coming your way over the next couple of days as we get stuck into the round. But yeah, feel free to comment your tips, or did you go Bombers, did you go Dockers? That seems to be the main difference between most of us out there. So I'll be interested to hear how you're travelling. Catch you guys. Cheers.